Do you believe in God? Do you think it's possible to meet God, to encounter God? Is it possible here on earth to have a little taste of heaven? Stay with us, because tonight we will be talking about how God has made all of this possible. Thank you. We're happy to have a group from Louisiana here tonight and many other visitors as well. First of all, I spoke with Father Mitch this afternoon, and he wanted me to give you this message. He told me to tell you that he is getting so ornery that he thought it best to leave the rehab before they kick him out. Seriously, Father Mitch is getting stronger and will be leaving rehab soon. He sounded great on the phone. In fact, he was out for a walk when I called him. Thank you for your prayers for him, and please continue them. We hope to have him back real soon. So how has God made it possible for us to encounter him and to have a little taste of heaven here on earth? Tonight's guest and I will be talking about the Sacred Liturgy, what the Church calls the high point and the source of the Church's life. The Catechism beautifully says this: every liturgical action, especially the celebration of the Eucharist and the sacraments, is an encounter between Christ and the Church. And in another place it says, in the earthly liturgy, we share in a foretaste of that heavenly liturgy toward which we journey as pilgrims. My guest tonight is the co-creator, executive producer, and host of Extraordinary Faith, a series presently on EWTN about classic sacred art, architecture, liturgy, and music. Please welcome Alex Began. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Father.
So, Alex, I've seen a couple of the episodes of Extraordinary Faith, and you hired a great crew from Los Angeles there to produce something that's really of quality. But let's talk first about your own story, how you had left the faith for a time.
Well, my father was a very devout Catholic, and unfortunately he passed away when I was 10 years old. And my mother was born Catholic but doesn't practice the faith, so right at that point in my life I stopped going to church, and I was young and of course uninformed. I didn't know what I was missing. But when I entered college, I decided that I was going to explore the faith again. My dad was a successful real estate developer, and he was not a stupid guy. So I figured he has to know something.
Right.
So I figured I'd walk into the nearest Catholic church and just figure out how I get back into the faith. So I did that, and little did I know that the church I walked into was Harvard's St. Paul Church, home of America's only boys choir. So I asked how do I get back into Mass? And the priest there said, go to any Mass except the 11 a.m. Mass on Sundays, because that's all Latin and organ music. Well, of course, this was exactly what I wanted. I loved organ music. I went to the Mass and was completely transformed and transfixed by a wonderfully celebrated liturgy with a boys' choir, a men's choir, an organ in the front, an organ in the back. It was an overwhelming experience, and it got me addicted to liturgy.
Wow. I was thinking when we were talking this afternoon about that quote from Augustine. You may know it's in the Catechism. I think it's 1157. And Augustine, in his Confessions, he talks about walking into this church, and he hears the sacred hymns, and he said the sound flowed into my ears, distilled truth into my heart, and then devotion surged up, and tears streamed down my eyes. But they were good tears. Was that something like you experienced? That
Absolutely.
It was something?
Absolutely. Well, the Catholic faith is one of the senses, and ideal liturgy can involve many of the senses: the sight, sound, taste. It can be transcendent if it's done well.
And that's what I was really beginning about in the beginning of this program, talking about really God gives us this means by which we can encounter Him, that we can encounter Christ, that He is present to us in a very profound way, and then these other things can enhance our experience of that.
That's right. That's right. And ever since that first experience, I've been trying to find good liturgy worldwide, and I've been trying to organize good liturgy in my hometown of Detroit. So it's doable, and it's being done all over the globe.
I like the last point on your curriculum vitae. You have your philosophy statement. Tell us what that is and why you chose that.
Well, I said that beauty is its own form of apologetics. Because when you think about it, we can have all the intellectual arguments we want in support of the Catholic faith, but to a newcomer who really doesn't know what they're looking for, to walk into a church and experience the beauty of sacred art, beautiful architecture, wonderfully executed music, and a beautifully done liturgy, that you don't have to explain it.
Right.
That person will perceive something special being there, and it will encourage them to learn more about their faith.
So what happened when you came back to Detroit? What were the next things that happened?
Well, I tried to find the best possible church in Detroit for this kind of elaborate liturgy, and at the time, we had the choice of several churches that offered the ordinary form in Latin. So I settled on St. Joseph's Church in downtown Detroit, and I was then, by accident, recruited to be an altar server. Bad move. That became a whole nother thing in my life. And within a few years, I ended up supervising the altar server program there. And for those who don't know Detroit, we're right across the river from Windsor, Canada. In Windsor, they had just started an extraordinary form Mass. And for a variety of reasons, my wife and I decided to start going over there, and they had a volunteer vacuum. So within a matter of weeks, suddenly I was altar serving there, and weeks after that, the priest got reassigned. So suddenly somebody had to find a new priest, train him in the extraordinary form, and this is the beginning of the end for me.
So you had to learn all of this. There's Fortescue.
Right,
You read
boy.
through all of that.
That's right.
All of the rubrics, and the details of the rubrics. And you had to learn that very quickly.
Exactly.
And learn it on the fly.
Learn it and learn how to teach it too, which actually was a great experience, because people can take the liturgy for granted, but when you are forced to learn it and forced to explain it to others, you realize how much thought the Church has put into the sacred liturgy, and the rubrics, the rules of the liturgy are there for a reason, to bring the heart and mind and soul to God.
Well, let's talk about the series that you produced. Why did you think it was important to produce this series?
In the last few decades, there have been a number of magazines and more recently internet blogs and websites devoted to the sacred liturgy and to sacred music and to the extraordinary form in particular, but nobody had done a television show. That had just occurred to me as a vacuum out there. Somebody should be doing a television show. A friend of mine who was a journalist for a Catholic newspaper in London basically egged me on and said, if nobody else is going to do it, we need to do it, or you need to do it. So we ended up finding some Los Angeles-based television people, because neither of us knew anything about television. We found some LA-based people who had extensive Hollywood experience. We just told them what we wanted to do. They effectively created the show and the format for us. And then we had the biggest problem, which was finding a network. But fortunately, EWTN was very receptive to this,
Yes.
and we got better, I think, as from episode to episode. I hope that's evident. And now we're rolling, and we're doing what I think needs to be done, and that is expose the beauty of Catholic tradition to a wide audience via television.
What are some of the topics that you're covering in this series?
Well, we have two kinds of shows. We have city-based shows and topic-based shows. So in the city-based shows, we've visited, first Mission San Juan Capistrano in Southern California, which is the home of one of the oldest traditional Latin masses in the country. Then we went to Boston next to see the St. Paul's Choir School, and third to St. Paul, Minnesota, then to Chicago, where they have a whole bunch of beautiful churches, then to Miami, where there's a great group of young adults behind Catholic tradition there.
Right.
And then we filmed episodes we have not shown yet in San Francisco, in my hometown of Detroit, and in London, England. Then we've also done some topic-based shows, such as 2 shows on Catholic architecture. We had one episode on new churches that are being built in a traditional style, and we've done another show on church restoration, and we've also done a few episodes that have not aired yet on sacred music.
That's so important that the Church says that sacred music is the greatest of the treasures of all of the arts. And I liked when I looked at your Facebook this afternoon, you had Mother Angelica there, and you said that she had an impact on sacred music.
Oh, absolutely. I think back to the 1980s, it would be very rare to encounter Latin in a Mass in a typical suburban parish. Sure, there were Latin Mass parishes, but in a typical suburban parish, you'd never hear Latin until Mother Angelica started using Latin in her ordinary form Masses on the network. And now it's very commonplace for there to be a Latin Agnus Dei or Latin Sanctus in a Mass. That's EWTN's legacy.
And it was something, when Mother became aware of Jubilate Deo, which was a booklet that Blessed Pope Paul VI issued to all the bishops of the world, that he wanted the lay faithful to know the ordinary of the Mass, the ordinary parts of the Mass in Latin, as well as some of the traditional hymns. And then that was reissued in 1986, again with that encouragement for the sake of unity. One voice, right? That's a group that's also helping to promote the Latin Mass. Una voce.
Una voce.
Right. Well, let's talk about the sacred architecture aspect. Last week, as you may know, we had Bishop Conley and Father Mattia from Lincoln, Nebraska, and they just built this beautiful church. It was completed last year, Divine Mercy Sunday, in the middle of the University of Nebraska campus. And that was something that the students really desired. And Bishop Conley told me that they have the altar, the high altar for the extraordinary form, but then also the freestanding altar for the ordinary form. So it is possible to build a beautiful church today. Right?
Oh, absolutely. We have the best technology now we've ever had. So architects and contractors have more tools available to them than in any point in human history. So there's no technological reason why we can't build the most beautiful churches ever constructed right now. We just need the will and the funding.
Right.
And it's actually happening. We did an episode of the show featuring an architect who's done a number of new church constructions in a gorgeous style. So it is being done, not only for new construction, but also for restoration.
Let's talk about those restorations too. You feature some of those in an upcoming episode.
Yes. Well, actually, there's 2 episodes in which we have notable restorations. In our church restoration episode, we talk about a few churches, but the one that comes to mind immediately is a small church in rural Fenimore, Wisconsin called St. Mary's. That church is an older church that had been whitewashed and modernized in the 1970s, but they've just restored it to a beautiful historic look with a brand new high altar, brand new side altars, brand new communion rails, beautiful mural work on the ceiling. And they did the whole project for, I think, around $700,000, which is, that's pennies, really. Now, the church had no structural problems, had no roof problems. It's just the art they put in there. But it can be done.
Right. Let's talk about, we have a little video clip that we're going to be going to, but introduce that, this little church in Chicago, I believe.
Right. The clip we're going to see is from St. Mary of Perpetual Help Church in Chicago, which it's a beautiful church that has been recently restored, but it's notable because it's just a typical parish operationally, and they decided not so long ago to implement the extraordinary form. So they trained their people, they tried to train the congregation, they created a music program, they trained altar servers. They really, from the bootstraps, created something from nothing. So that's what we're going to see.
Well, let's take a look. This is from the series, Extraordinary Faith. And you're going to get to see Father Bart, who's canon of St. John Cantius. That's actually where I learned the extraordinary form. And let's take a look at that clip now.
With all the emphasis on restoration of the sacred art in here, how do you think that sacred art informs the faith of a congregation?
I think the sacred art is a great catechetical tool, and especially for children. I remember one time mother brought her little girl into the church, a little toddler, and it was wintertime, so the little girl had her snowsuit on, and the mother had the girl standing on a bench and was taking off the snowsuit, and while the mother was doing all of this, I saw the little girl just looking around at all the pictures in the windows, and then all of a sudden you heard in this little girl voice, "Wow!" And that kind of attraction at that young age is what gets the little children to start to see the saints, to see Jesus, to see all the things that pertain to God. And then as they grow, I think they begin to ask questions. Who's that in that statue? Who's that in that window? I know when I was a boy, we went to church every Sunday as a family, and then once grade school started, every day we went to Mass before school. And I used to look at all the windows, look at all the statues. I used to ask questions about who are these saints, who are these images? What does this mean? So that's how I learned a lot of my faith at a young age. And then, of course, if the children are asking mom and dad, who is this? Then mom and dad have to know their faith. They have to know their saints. They have to know their traditions. So, and with the day and age of Google, they can do some of their own research and find Catholic resources.
You never know where awareness of their faith might lead.
Exactly. I think these beautiful religious windows, these sacred statues, the various symbols of the church could inspire young men and women to vocations to either the religious life or for the young men to holy orders. When they begin seeing their faith at a young age, I think it certainly could inspire some if they have that disposition to pursue a vocation. And even marriage, you know, you'll see marriage symbols in many churches, symbols of the Holy Family. Look at the creche, which is here for Christmas, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, to give young people who might be disposed to a vocation in marriage to be like the Holy Family, to bring their faith into their marriage.
What a remarkable church that is, and it shows you what can be done to restore something and really make it something beautiful. And beauty is an attribute of God, right? So
Absolutely.
When we encounter beauty, it draws us to God. Now, you said something this afternoon that surprised me. You said that London is a Catholic paradise.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
How is that so?
Well, people tend to think of London as a Protestant capital or a secular society, but I think of London as the epitome of a city where Catholic liturgy takes primacy. And I make that statement because there are so many churches there that do beautiful liturgy, both ordinary form and extraordinary form. There are, at last count, 14 parishes with professional choirs at them. And professional at a level where I think the worst of the London choirs is equal to some of the best of the North American choirs. It's almost depressing how good it is over there. And for any reader or any viewers who may wish to go over there, I would recommend the London Oratory Church, St. James Spanish Place Church, and of course Westminster Cathedral as places to start. We will have 3 episodes of Extraordinary Faith coming up that were filmed in London, so you can actually see this and experience this for yourself. But one more thing I should say, not just the quality of the liturgy, but the quality of the Catholic life there. I was struck that the week we happened to be there, there was a procession through the streets they called the Rosary Crusades. Almost 1,000 people walking down Brompton Road, which is the main shopping road in London. They had closed off the street, and to see this public demonstration of faith on a Saturday on this busy shopping street. And to make matters more bizarre, they had another procession from Westminster Cathedral to St. George's Cathedral on the other side of the Thames the very next Saturday.
Wow.
Now, how many major cities can claim something like that?
Right. That's awesome. Now, you say it's primarily a lay-led movement. How is that so?
That's right. It's actually ironic that in the post-Vatican II era, that one of the perfect examples of lay leadership in the church is the resurgence of the traditional Latin Mass. It's instigated more often than not by groups of lay people, where certainly we need clergy to celebrate the Mass, but the demand has to start somewhere. And organizing the Masses and doing much of the legwork to assemble training materials, put on receptions, do the advertising, do everything to organize the Mass is often done by the laity. I see that in Detroit, where our Windsor Mass started that way. A new Mass we have in Oakland County, north of Detroit, at the Academy of the Sacred Heart Chapel was started the same way. And in Los Angeles, I see it. In Miami, I see it. It is a largely, ironically, lay-led.
I was surprised how many places have the extraordinary form around Detroit now, you were telling me.
Yeah, we've gone from just one Mass with a whopping 10 people at it in 2003 to, I believe, 14 sites now that do it with regularity, some not every week. But it keeps growing. We just got a Mass on First Fridays at Old St. Mary's, which is Detroit's major historic downtown tourist church. It's glorious.
And you've put together a team that actually helps to provide for these places.
Yeah,
right?
well, that gets back to the volunteer thing. We have a core group of volunteers whose home churches are all around the metro area, some in Detroit, some in Windsor. But we all have a common interest in promoting the Latin liturgy. So we have musicians, music directors, priests, altar servers, ushers. My wife, who's here in the audience today, does receptions. So when we have a new Mass, for example, we're going to have a Mass at Detroit's Cathedral coming up soon. We had to assemble a volunteer team. No problem.
Let's talk about the Juventutem movement. What does that word mean, and what is that?
Well, the word Juventutem means youth, and it comes from one of the lines in the prayers at the foot of the altar at the beginning of the traditional Latin Mass. It is a young adults group. It started, I believe, in France or England, and it has grown into a worldwide set of chapters of young adults who espouse the traditional liturgy. Juventutem in Detroit has, I think, almost 300 members now, and is one of the largest chapters in the world, along with Miami.
Wow.
We did an episode about the Juventutem chapter in Miami. And these young adults not only get together for prayer, but also for social events. For example, in Jackson, Michigan, which is near Detroit, they had a Mass last Friday and a young adults dance afterwards. So it gives young adults many reasons to get together.
I think that's so important to provide something, an alternative for young people. And if they can be together with like-minded people who have similar values, good moral values, that's a great plus for them.
Exactly.
Right. Now, if a priest is interested in learning the extraordinary form, how can they go about doing that? Can you help them?
Well, I can help them. I guess there's two approaches to training priests. One is if a priest has the time and the inclination, there are week-long courses, like the one you took at St. John Cantius, at the Fraternity of St. Peter, and at the Institute of Christ the King, where priests are immersed in learning the Mass and learning a lot of things surrounding the Mass. But I've had to do something more intensive because many priests can't get away.
Right.
They want to learn the Mass, but they only have a day or two to do it in. So as part of my devotion to the Mass, I offer no-charge training of a priest in a 2-day intensive training seminar where I go to the priest's location and bring the training materials, and by the end of the second day, the priest is forced, even if he doesn't feel comfortable, to celebrate his first Latin Mass. And my point in doing it in 2 days is that it's not that difficult. It may be foreign, but it's not that difficult.
And after you offer it a number of times, it just becomes part of you, just like the Novus Ordo. So you said in 2 days, he's going to celebrate his first
Well,
Mass.
we start with just going over the background of what the Mass is and what supplies you need and how you prepare a parish for it. But then we rehearse and rehearse and rehearse the first day and the second day, and then at the end, I don't really care if he's sweating, he's celebrating a Mass.
And they can contact you through your website?
Yes, we have a website, extraordinaryfaith.tv, and there's a page all about the priest training, and there's a contact information page on there as well.
Have you trained any bishops?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, in Detroit, several bishops. My favorite bishop, if I dare say that, is Bishop Earl Boy, who was originally an auxiliary bishop in Detroit. He is now the ordinary of the Diocese of Lansing, Michigan, and he has really embraced the extraordinary form. For example, in May, he's celebrating 2 Masses. He did one this past Sunday, and he's doing another one on May 22nd. He loves the Mass, he does it well, and it has influenced the celebration of the ordinary form, too.
It does, and that's really what Pope Benedict had envisioned, that there would be a mutual enrichment that would happen through learning the extraordinary form and the ordinary form, that there's an enrichment that happens there.
Absolutely. The extraordinary form does everything so precisely according to rubrics that there's very little variation allowed in the Mass, but it is so focused on reverent celebration. One example is how carefully the priest has to treat the particles of the Blessed Sacrament. Yes. You'll notice the careful scooping up with the paten of particles on the corporal. That can only affect a priest in a way that helps him celebrate the ordinary form with greater reverence.
What kind of resources would you have available? Do you have resources to help the music department? If somebody wants to up their music to incorporate more sacred music, do you have any resources or links that they could benefit from?
Well, first of all, I have to steer everybody to our own website, extraordinaryfaith.tv, where we have a resources page that lists many of those sort of things. But in a broader spectrum, I would steer people to musicasacra.com, which is the Church Music Association of America, to ccwatershed.org, that's Corpus Christi Watershed, which has also a lot of musical resources. My own windsorlatinmass.org, which has chant sheets that I think you use.
Yes, so that's what I used when I was first learning the High Mass and how to sing the chants.
My friend Michel Ozerac created these chant sheets to help priests chant the collect, the Epistle of the Gospel, and the Post-Communion of the Extraordinary Form. So that's on windsorlatinmass.org. And then there is cpdl.org, the Choral Public Domain Library, where so many choral pieces can be found. So the internet's been a great blessing for resources and also conferences. There is a sacred music colloquium that's held every summer. It's being held, I believe, in St. Louis this summer, that the Musica Sacra, or that the Church Music Association puts on. And there is another conference that'll be held in London this summer called Sacred Liturgy, which isn't exclusively about music, but has a heavy musical element.
And you're going to find people in the ordinary form and extraordinary form being part of this, right?
Correct.
Because it enriches both forms.
Exactly.
Having the sacred music like that.
Oh yeah, there's no reason why the ordinary form cannot also employ the great musical repertoire of the Church, both Gregorian chant and sacred polyphony.
And you'll have these links on your website, so our viewers.
Well, yeah, there's some on there. I don't remember
There's some
what's-
on there, and hopefully in the future too. But just hit rewind right on this program so you can get those links too. And I have to say, in my own celebration of the Mass, it's been a blessing to learn the extraordinary form, but also what Mother had envisioned, that we would use some of these traditional Gregorian chants with the Sanctus and the Agnus Dei, the Kyrie, and all of those. There's just a depth to that music that modern music just really can't compete with. There's a timelessness to it, right?
And not only the music, but so much of the liturgy has had the benefit of the greatest minds in
Right.
history thinking about it, refining it over the centuries.
Right.
Who are we to think we can top this?
Right.
So the Gregorian chant is a beautiful example. It has evolved over the centuries, and we now have this treasure both in the ordinary, the Mass, and in the chant of the Graduale and the
Right.
Liber, the books that the choir would use to sing. It's incredible.
Well, we're going to take a break right now. We'd like you to call in with your questions. If you have any questions for Alex or about what we've talked about in this first half of the show, we'd love for you to call in. We'll see you in a minute. Thank you. Well, we have a wonderful group from Louisiana and from other places here visiting today. And we'd love to have you come too and make a pilgrimage here. Alex was talking today. He says every time he's been here, it's been beautiful. And I said, you haven't been here in August. But it gets pretty hot in August, but it's still beautiful here. But we'd love to have you come and make a pilgrimage, attend a live show. We also have some live shows that happen in the afternoon hours. And then you can go to the Shrine of the Blessed Sacrament, which is a beautiful place to pray. And you can go to the John Paul II Eucharistic Center. There's so much to see up there as well. So if you'd like to make a pilgrimage, you can call our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966 or go to EWTN.com. We have a caller, Dan in Connecticut. Hello, Dan. What is your
Father,
question?
how are you?
Doing well.
Good. Father, I have both a comment and a question regarding the liturgy, use of the extraordinary form, and the Mass as it's celebrated at EWTN. With regards to the extraordinary rite, one of our churches here where we live just celebrated. I've attended. And quite honestly, I like to use this analogy. Many people don't like opera, and you ask them, why don't you like the opera? Well, I don't know what it's about. I don't understand anything. I think when you attend the extraordinary rite, it's the same thing. I would like to know what the priest is saying in English. I want to hear the prayers in English. I want to hear the entire liturgy in English. That's how I regard the extraordinary rite. And secondly, my question regarding Mass celebrated at EWTN, I don't understand why EWTN feels it's necessary to combine both English and Latin. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if, without my being confrontational, but it sounds like EWTN is trying to hold on to something which now people regard as sort of superficial?
Okay, good questions. Let's answer the first one. Now, if someone doesn't understand the Mass, how should they approach the Mass?
Okay, well, that's a good question. First of all, I think the Church is not trying to force Latin or force the extraordinary form on anyone. It's one of many options of liturgy in the Church, but it is legitimate to want to understand what's going on at the altar. And for that reason, at most extraordinary form sites in English-speaking countries, you'll see a little red booklet done by the legendary Mary Krejci of Chicago that has the Latin of the ordinary on one side, the English on the other side, and little explanations in the margin of what's going on at the altar. And then on top of that, I have to put in a plug. I've spent thousands of hours creating Latin English propers handouts for most of the days of the church year, which are on the windsorlatinmass.org website, and which we print and distribute not only at my churches, but in many other churches have taken these handouts, so that the faithful have all the readings, all the antiphons in English right at their disposal.
And I like what you had on one of your programs. You were talking to a priest, that you don't go in there expecting you're going to get everything all at once. But he was saying maybe you pick up a particular word, or you're just watching the beauty of the action, or something like that. And then gradually, just like anything, you grow in the understanding and knowledge and appreciation of it.
There is so much to learn about the traditional Latin Mass that a newcomer shouldn't focus too much on the words to begin with, but should just take in the sacred action and see what's being conveyed by the posture of the priest, the actions at the altar. What does that all mean? What is it saying about what we believe in the Blessed Sacrament, and how the priest should prepare himself for the celebration of the Mass?
Very good. And then to ask your answer your second question, there is a booklet, again, and I mentioned it earlier in the show. This was actually the 1974 version of it, and this was a later 1986 version of it called Jubilate Deo. And what these booklets are, Pope Paul VI wanted all of the members of the church to know the ordinary parts of the Mass. Well, our Mass is televised internationally. So we're in 145 countries around the world. Not everyone knows English. But Latin is the universal language of the church. And when I go to a large celebration in Rome, for example, you've got people from all over the world. And it's a moment of deep unity of all Catholics throughout the world. When we're singing together the Pater Noster, the Our Father, we're singing the Sanctus, we know these traditional chants, and we can enter into them. So I think it's a source of unity. And since the network is here to help instruct people as well, as Alex mentioned earlier, you didn't hear any of these chants, these beautiful chants from the past, too much in the parishes, but as EWTN exposed people to that and they experienced the beauty of that, they were more attracted to use that in the parish as well. We have a studio question next. Hello, where are you from?
I'm from Fluka, Louisiana.
Okay.
And I would just like to ask you, Father, which way do you prefer saying Mass, in Latin or in English? Personally, I have a problem following the Mass in Latin. And I was just wondering if there's...
Yes, you know, it's interesting. I had learned with Father Miguel the extraordinary form at St. John Cantius. And I went back to my home parish. I don't think there had been an extraordinary form Mass offered there at St. Paul's. And it's a beautiful little church where I grew up, a Gothic church. And my mother commented, she didn't like all the Latin. But then a neighbor of my parents said that that was the Mass he grew up with, and that he always had a sense of there was something sacred about that, and he was really attracted to that. So I think for myself personally, if Jesus becomes present on the altar through my hands, that's my favorite Mass. So that happens in vernacular, in the English. It happens in the Latin. I love the beautiful liturgy that we have at the shrine, we have here. I've offered the extraordinary form at Blessed Sacrament, which is downtown. I had the Christmas Mass. You've been there too,
Yeah.
right? So, do you have any comments or thoughts on that as well?
Well, it's important to realize that in the extraordinary form, there's more than just the Latin language. The prayers are more elaborate. The offertory comes to mind. The prayers of the foot of the altar at the beginning of Mass come to mind. They express a very clear theology of the Eucharist and a theology of sacrifice that's perhaps not so clear in the more abbreviated prayers of the ordinary form. Now, that's a second issue. You have to think of what is the purpose of the Latin. The Latin is there to create a continuity of language that's not dependent on regional dialects. It's not dependent on vernacular changing, colloquialisms coming in and out of the language over time. There's a very consistent message being sent in the use of an unchanging language like Latin. So it's the unchangingness as well as the elaborateness of the extraordinary form that creates an appeal for that type of liturgy.
And there's a connection with the past, right? This is a Mass that's been celebrated for centuries.
You are celebrating or assisting at the same Mass that saints and martyrs for centuries have.
So you had Unipero Serra featured in one of your programs. He offered Mass at that altar, and you had the extraordinary,
Exactly.
the same Mass that
Exactly.
he would have offered in California. We have a caller, Marianne in New York. Welcome, Marianne. What's your question?
Hi, Father. How are you?
Well, I'm doing well.
Good. I just want to give a shout out to Father Mitch. I hope he's doing well, and Mom and I are saying prayers for him. So
Thank you.
No worries there. Quick question for your guest. Just in listening to some of the other questions, I attend Mass here in New York City where we do the extraordinary form of the Mass. And part of the thing why I'm a little curious that I would love to be more involved in the chanting and the singing, but I find sometimes that the organist is drowning out the choir, and the choir is drowning out the people. So I feel a little bit disenfranchised because I can't participate in the chanting and the singing. So any advice to approach maybe the choir master or what? Because I feel like we're being a little bit of wishy-washy because you feel a little bit disenfranchised because the choir and the choir master are not incorporating the congregation. So any advice on how to be better participating in the Mass would be great. Thank you.
The congregation can participate in the Sanctus Ianus Dei, those chants, right?
Absolutely. The 1958 instruction Musica Sacra specifically addressed this subject and said that the congregation is encouraged to participate in the chants of the Mass. And by that they meant Gregorian chant in the sense of, as you said, the Sanctus Ianus Dei, the Gloria, the Credo, the Kyrie. When that's done in Gregorian form, if the choir has chosen to do a polyphonic Mass, a Mozart Mass, a Haydn Mass, a De Lassus Mass, well, then it's not practical for the congregation to participate in something like that. But that is a legitimate option for the music. And there are those who greatly prefer polyphonic Masses. Churches like St. Agnes in St. Paul, Minnesota, which we featured, do a polyphonic Mass every Sunday.
Wow.
Now, we've had a similar issue in our Windsor Latin Mass community at St. Alphonsus Church, and we've addressed that by alternating. We have Gregorian Mass one week, polyphonic Mass the other week.
Okay.
So we keep everybody happy, and those who wish to participate by singing along with the Gregorian settings are welcome to do so on those Sundays.
And I noticed that St. Agnes is having a memorial Mass, a Requiem Mass for Mother Angelica this coming Sunday, I
Good
think.
for them.
And I forget what the Mass are singing, though. Well, we have a studio question next. John is from Hanceville. I know him and his family well. His boys serve the Mass there at the shrine. What's your question, John?
Well, we're fortunate to go to the shrine and have some Latin and some English. And I think the hardest part when we go to the Latin Mass is to keep the children's attention. And, you know, I'm juggling around with the little one, and, you know, the other ones, they just seem like, you know, what's going on here? Is there ways that we as parents can learn more about how to teach our children about the Mass?
Well, there are many, many books available for children to learn the Mass and for parents to help them. There is one that comes to mind, the Marian's Children Missal, which is, I don't remember who sells that, but you can Google it. The Marian Children's Missal. There are other children's missals. There's, of course, missals for adults. There's books explaining the Mass that have art in them, that have pictures of the Mass and explain the various segments of the traditional Latin Mass. As far as where to buy them, first place I'd look is fssp.com, the Fraternity of St. Peter's bookstore. That's got quite a comprehensive selection. So start with showing your children the structure of the Mass using one of these tutorial books.
And I think you've found too that the boys love to serve this Mass, right?
Oh, Father,
right?
that's an understatement. We never have a problem attracting altar servers to the Latin Mass, and not just young boys, but adult men as well. It seems like because serving at the altar is challenging in the extraordinary form. There's always something to do. There are defined roles. The more experienced servers are constantly coaching the younger servers. That this sense of challenge creates camaraderie and a desire to learn the liturgy and do more. And it's also a strong source of vocations.
We have another caller, Marie in New York. Hello, Marie. What is your question?
I would like some information on how we can go about to get the traditional Mass set in New York State. I have a son who's a priest. I can't mention his name because he would love to do the Latin Mass, and he got in trouble for doing it. I just want some information on how, if we get petitions. There was a beautiful church in Manhattan where Father Rutledge used to do the traditional Mass, and that was all taken down and dissembled. It's so sad. It's such a sad commentary. And the music, I have to tell you, I went to a Mass Sunday, 11 o'clock Mass, supposed to be high Mass, English Mass, and guess what they played? When the saints come marching home. Hello, I was furious.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we were going to talk about too. How can people find the nearest traditional Mass that's being offered?
Okay, well, let's start with that. That is the easiest way to start this discussion, and that is look for Masses that already exist. There are many online directories of Latin Masses. There's one that I'm not even going to try to give you the URL, but if you go to extraordinaryfaith.tv and go to our resources page, the long URL is there. There's that one, and then there's also ecclesiadei.org, ECCLESIADEI.org. They have a reasonably up-to-date directory of traditional Latin Masses. So that's where you find the ones that are currently operating. As far as getting one started, I would encourage people to realize that, number one, you cannot fall in love with a building. Priests move around, congregations move around. Don't think of it as something for a building. Think of it as a community that needs to be in a general vicinity of something and may have to move from one church to another. So you need the ingredients of a willing priest, a music director, key volunteers, a church willing to host you. That's a lot of work. I know, I've been through this many times. It can take years to get all those elements together, but don't give up. It can be done. You have Vatican legislation on your side in the form of 2007's Summorum Pontificum and 2011's Universae Ecclesiae. So read those documents and get to work.
That's right. So we have another caller, Anastasia in Ohio. Hello, Anastasia. What's your question?
Thanks for taking my call, Father. Just two quick questions. First of all, is there any architectural requirements for a parish to be able to have an extraordinary Mass, form of the Mass? And the second question was prompted by the gentleman that called in first. I've got the Roman Missal, 1962, and I was wondering if that's compatible with the extraordinary form and if that can be used at one of those Masses. Thank you for taking my call. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the second question is the easiest one. Yes, that's the right missal. That's an excellent hand missal, good choice. As far as architectural requirements, I think we have to realize that in our current day and age, yes, there's rubrics, yes, there's requirements, but there's also practicality. In an ideal world, yes, you want a church with a high altar, with a communion rail, but let's get real. This Mass has been celebrated on the hoods of Jeeps. It can be celebrated in an imperfectly laid out church. So as long as the ability of the priest to celebrate the Mass facing the altar, ad orientem, as long as you can accomplish that, you can make the rest of the church work. And you can create an ad orientem situation by building a platform in front of an altar that doesn't allow that right now. You can make the first row of pews in the church into a communion rail. Be creative. Make it work.
Right. And, the intention, in your group or any of these groups is not to try to build a wedge or us against them sort of mentality, but that we're both here to worship God, to encounter God, and to enrich the liturgy so that it will even draw us even more deeply into the sacred mysteries.
Exactly. There is no point in being argumentative on either side of this equation. The analogy I've used 100 times, and I forgive those who I've said this to before, you can like seafood, I can like steak, and I can like steak without hating seafood. In fact, think of it, steak restaurants don't slam the seafood restaurants in town. They tell you how great their steak is.
That's right.
So let's do what we do the very best way to give the very best glory to God.
And that was always Mother's desire too, that we should do our best for God. So we want to give Him the best in our art, our architecture, our music, our whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then take others along as well, that this will be something that can enrich their lives too. You look at the Shrine of the Blessed Sacrament, it's just this beautiful place where you have this sense of light and God's glory, and everything points us upward with the Gothic spires and so on. And that's what the beauty of architecture and art and music can do.
Architecture alone should have a sense of verticality. Think of how your soul is uplifted when you go into a church with a very high ceiling.
Right.
It does direct the soul to God. And music, there are stories I could tell you. I remember when I was a teenager, I walked into the Wieskirche. It's a little rural church in Bavaria, and when I walked in, the organist started playing some grand tune, and I'll never forget how it struck me about the power of God hit home in a very powerful way just because of that organ music.
Well, we're coming to the end of this program. Are there any closing thoughts that you would have about your series and about your work?
Well, my series, I hope your viewers tune in and watch Extraordinary Faith. We have shot 19 episodes so far, and we're going to keep on producing more because there's so much beauty to show. There's so many communities and subjects globally that deserve attention for working so hard to make the Sacred Liturgy something very special. And we intend to keep showing the beauty of these wonderful traditions. But as far as a tip goes, I would say to those viewers who have not experienced the traditional Latin Mass, try one out. And don't just go once. Allow yourself 3 visits before you make a final judgment on whether you like it or not. Because it's different from the ordinary form as commonly experienced in North America at least. And there's a message being conveyed. And I ask you to think about your Catholic faith and think about what the actions at the altar really say and what you take out of the extraordinary form.
Beautiful. We thank you for coming to tell us a story of Extraordinary Faith. And Extraordinary Faith airs on Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on Wednesdays at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's in the United States. There are other times on our international broadcasts. So make sure you tune in to check out Extraordinary Faith. Well, thank you for being with us tonight. And remember, as Mother Angelica always said, this network is brought to you by you. And we thank God. I think people are discovering even more so how remarkable the life of Mother Angelica was and what God brought about through her. that we can bring you these different programs, these people from all over the world, literally, to tell their own story of how they are helping to renew the church, how they're helping other people to grow in faith, so that you can benefit from that too. So please do remember us between your light and gas bill and other bills that you may have. This network is brought to you by you, and we hope that you can come here someday to make a pilgrimage. And may Almighty God bless you and keep you, let His face shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you His peace, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. See you next time.